Hello friends, welcome aboard the Sleepy Fairy Tale Express. I'm the Red Mermaid. This train is a dream journey to fairy tale land. Have you all got your train tickets? Subscribe and hit the like button to always be able to ride. Close your eyes, prick up your ears, and listen in a comfortable position. Today's story is The Little Mermaid. Deep in the dark ocean, there was a magical kingdom that seemed like a dream. This kingdom was grand and beautiful, and the mermaids living there enjoyed a happy life. They spent their days singing and dancing, each relishing their own lives in the sea. At the heart of the kingdom stood an enchanting palace. This palace was adorned with the treasures of the sea. Its walls were made of colorful coral and studded with shining pearls. The coral glowed as if bathed in sunlight, and the pearls sparkled like stars. The corals were of various colors, some were fiery red, some were refreshing blue, and others were shaded with purple. The pearls glimmered softly like moonlight, illuminating the entire palace. At the entrance of the palace, a giant clam opened to welcome visitors. This clam held a pearl, and the light from the pearl felt warm and gentle. Inside the palace, it was like entering a treasure trove, with various sea creatures used as decorations. There were fish-shaped ornaments, curtains made of seaweed, and furniture crafted from coral. The floor of the kingdom was covered with soft sand. This sand glittered like gold, and made a rustling sound underfoot. Tiny creatures lived everywhere, blending in with the mermaids. Fish swam gracefully, shrimp burrowed in the sand, and jellyfish floated along the currents, creating a magical scene. This mystical kingdom was hidden deep under the sea, making it hard for humans to discover. But for the mermaids, it was the safest and most peaceful haven. The sound of the waves was like a lullaby that enveloped the mermaids, who lived happily in this serene place. In this beautiful and mysterious kingdom, the mermaids created new stories every day. Their tales were filled with endless adventures, love, and hope, all beginning from the depths of the ocean. In the deep-sea palace of the kingdom lived 6 beautiful princesses. Each of them was stunning and possessed unique talents and personalities. One morning, the king looked at his beloved 6 princesses in the central hall of the palace, smiling warmly. "My lovely princesses, what adventures do you have planned for today?" he asked. His voice was deep and resonant, echoing through the palace walls like the heartbeat of the sea. The princesses gazed at their father with bright faces. From the eldest to the youngest, they wore dresses adorned with coral and pearls of different colors. The eldest wore a dress of blue coral and silver pearls. The second princess had a dress of red coral and golden pearls, and the third wore a dress of lavender coral with purple pearls. The fourth princess's dress was decorated with green coral and emerald pearls. The fifth wore a dress with orange coral and pearly beads, and the youngest was dressed in pink coral with white pearls. The eldest princess responded first to the king's question. "Father, I wish to explore the coral forest today. I've heard there are many new creatures we've never seen before." The second princess excitedly added, "I want to have a seahorse race. They are such fast and beautiful creatures." The third princess smiled and said, "I want to search for hidden treasures in the deep sea. It's like listening to old stories from the past, and I find it so intriguing." The fourth princess beamed as she spoke, "I want to explore the underwater caves. I've heard there are mysterious lights and special scenery in there." The fifth princess clapped her hands in delight. "I want to make a necklace out of seashells. It sounds like fun to find different kinds of shells." Lastly, the youngest princess shyly spoke up, "Father, I'm so curious about what's above the sea. I want to know what happens up there." The king smiled gently at his youngest daughter's words. "My dear, the world above the sea is different from ours. But when you grow older and gain more experience, someday you will be able to visit the surface." The king's voice echoed warmly once more. The princesses began their day with hearts full of dreams about their adventures. The underwater kingdom remained peaceful and beautiful, and the adventures of the 6 princesses had just begun. Among the 6 princesses, the youngest stood out the most. She was a radiant presence. Her hair was as red as the sun, and her eyes were clear and transparent like the blue sea. Her smile made all the sea creatures happy. But what made the youngest princess truly special was her voice. Her voice was as clear and beautiful as a string of pearls. When she sang, all the sea creatures were captivated by her melody. Fish danced to her song, corals swayed in harmony, and even in the quietest caves, her voice resonated. Her voice was deep and beautiful, like the heartbeat of the sea. The youngest princess was always full of curiosity. She often ventured outside the palace to explore the corners of the ocean. She discovered new creatures in the coral forests and made friends with the little fish. She loved uncovering the secrets of the sea, collecting seashells one day and visiting small houses made of seaweed on another. The youngest princess was especially curious about the world above the sea. She wondered what was up there and what kind of life humans led. She often looked at the stars in the night sky, imagining the stories they held. Her curiosity was endless, always filled with a desire to learn new things. When the youngest princess sang in the grand hall of the palace, all the mermaids listened. Her voice reached the depths of the sea, bringing peace and happiness to all creatures. Her song was like magic, and those who heard it forgot their worries and dreamed happy dreams. The youngest princess treasured her unique gift. Through her songs, she expressed her feelings and communicated with all her friends in the sea. Her songs carried love and hope, and she wished her voice could reach beyond the sea to all places in the world. This beautiful and curious youngest princess was the most beloved in the underwater kingdom. Her story began in the depths of the sea and was ready to continue with endless adventures and love. Every day, she dreamed of new adventures and made the world beautiful with her voice. The youngest princess was always filled with curiosity about the world above the sea. Though she had seen many wonders while swimming freely underwater, she had no knowledge of what lay above. What kind of world would unfold above the sea? What stories were hidden there? Her heart beat with these questions. At night, the youngest princess would gaze at the stars in the sky, letting her imagination soar. She wondered where the stars came from and what stories they held. Though she had heard tales about the world above the sea, she had never seen it herself, and just imagining it made her heart race. One clear day, the youngest princess cautiously approached her father, the king. Her heart was filled with questions about the world above, and she could no longer contain her curiosity. "Father, what is above the sea? Is the sand on the beach really soft? What does a sunset look like?" The youngest princess asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and anticipation. The king smiled gently at his daughter's questions. "My dear, above the sea, there are many things we don't know. The sand on the beach is very soft and warm. When you step on it, it's like walking on cotton candy. A sunset is truly beautiful. The sky turns red, and the sun slowly disappears beyond the horizon. That moment is like a magical time." Listening to her father's words, the youngest princess let her imagination run wild. She pictured herself standing on a beach, feeling the soft sand and watching the beautiful sunset. Her desire to see the world above grew even stronger. "Father, I want to see all those things for myself. I want to feel the sand on the beach and see the sunset with my own eyes," the youngest princess said earnestly. Her voice was filled with a yearning for her dream. The king loved his youngest daughter's curiosity, but also felt worried. "My dear, you are very curious. But you are still young. Until you turn 15, you cannot go above the sea," the king said gently. His eyes were filled with deep love and a desire to protect his daughter. The youngest princess understood her father's words. She knew he was right, but she could not hide her excitement about the world above the sea. "Yes, father. I will keep my promise," the youngest princess said, nodding. Her eyes still sparkled, showing respect for her father's words and a longing for her dream. The youngest princess kept her dream of the world above deep in her heart. She eagerly awaited her 15th birthday, hoping to see the world above for herself. Although she promised to wait, her curiosity and adventurous spirit still filled her heart. The youngest princess remembered her father's words and spent her days discovering new things in the sea. She grew through small adventures, always keeping her dream of the world above alive in her heart. The youngest princess respected her father's words and fulfilled her duties in the sea every day. She sang beautiful songs with her lovely voice and played with her friends, enjoying happy times. Yet, deep in her heart, the dream of the world above still lingered. Every night, the youngest princess looked out of her window, letting her imagination soar. Though the underwater scenery was beautiful, she wondered about the world beyond. Her heart raced with excitement, and she often closed her eyes and imagined the world above the sea. One day, while exploring the coral forest with her friends, she whispered to a little fish friend, "Someday, I'll see the world above the sea. I want to feel the sand on the beach and see the beautiful sunset with my own eyes." The little fish nodded, listening to the princess's words. "Then, your dream will surely come true. You are always brave and curious." The youngest princess smiled at her friend's words. Her dream of the world above still made her heart race, making her even more special. That night, the youngest princess gazed out of her window and whispered, "What kind of place is the world above the sea? What adventures will I have there?" Her heart was filled with excitement, and her eyes sparkled brightly. The youngest princess spent each day dreaming of new adventures while enjoying her life underwater. Deep in her heart, her dream of the world above remained, waiting for the day it would come true. Thus, the youngest princess enjoyed her life under the sea, while still dreaming of the world above. Her dreams were as vast and deep as the endless ocean, and those dreams made her shine even brighter. Finally, the day arrived. It was the youngest mermaid princess's 15th birthday. The entire underwater kingdom was beautifully decorated to celebrate her birthday. The corals glowed brighter, and the pearls sparkled as if kissed by sunlight. Fish danced, and jellyfish shone like chandeliers from the ceiling. The palace transformed into a dreamlike scene. All the mermaids of the kingdom gathered to celebrate the youngest princess's birthday. Her sisters wore sparkling dresses and smiled warmly at her. The king and queen joyfully celebrated their youngest daughter. "My dear, today is your 15th birthday. Now, you can finally see the world above the sea," the king said warmly. His voice was filled with pride and love. "Wow, I can finally go above the sea." The youngest princess's heart raced with excitement. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation, and a bright smile appeared on her face. Her sisters gathered around her, chatting excitedly. "Little sister, you must be so excited today. Tell us all about the world above when you come back." They looked at her with envious eyes, remembering their own dreams of the world above, but now celebrating her moment. The youngest princess nodded, eager to meet their expectations. "Yes, I will tell you everything. I'm so curious about how beautiful the world above is. Her voice was full of excitement and joy. After all the preparations were complete, the youngest princess took a deep breath and slowly headed toward the surface. Her tail moved strongly through the water, and her heart was filled with anticipation. Soon, she would see the world above for the first time. Her sisters waved and cheered her on. "Be careful, little sister. We'll be here waiting for your story." Their voices were warm and filled with love. The youngest princess, buoyed by her sister's encouragement, swam higher and higher. She left the underwater world behind and ascended to the gently rippling surface. As the sea's color brightened, her heart was filled with even more excitement. The youngest princess started her adventure with a happy smile. Her heart was filled with anticipation and excitement. "It feels like a dream that I can finally explore the world above," she whispered to herself. As she swam above the water, she looked around in awe at the endless beauty of the sea. The sound of the waves was like a lullaby to her ears, and the sun cast its warm light on her. The youngest princess swam along the shore, exploring her surroundings. She discovered the soft sand on the beach and gently touched it. "So this is sand. It's so soft and warm," she murmured, smiling. Near the beach, there were various seashells scattered around. She picked up shells of different colors and shapes, examining each one closely. "These shells are so beautiful. I've never seen anything like them in the sea," she marveled, carefully keeping the shells. Determined to go further, the youngest princess swam back into the sea with a strong flick of her tail. Her heart was filled with curiosity and eagerness for new adventures. As she swam, she encountered various marine creatures. She swam with colorful fish and passed through coral reefs. There, she made many new friends. The fish welcomed her warmly, and she enjoyed playing with them. The youngest princess swam above the gentle waves, leaving the deep sea behind. Her heart still fluttered with excitement, and everything around her felt new and wonderful. The world above the sea was incredibly beautiful. The clear blue sky stretched endlessly, and the soft sunlight reflected off the surface of the water, making it sparkle. The waves danced gently, like small hands waving to greet her. Droplets of water caught the sunlight, creating a rainbow of colors that made her heart race with joy. The youngest princess lifted her head and slowly looked around the world above the sea. In the distance, the shoreline glistened with soft, bright sand, and the waves gently caressed the beach. Near the shore, small trees grew, swaying gracefully in the wind. Her heart swelled with joy. "I can finally see the world above the sea," she whispered to herself. The youngest princess floated carefully on the waves, exploring her surroundings. Her tail moved smoothly through the water, and her eyes sparkled with the excitement of discovering a new world. The air above the sea was fresh and invigorating. The sea breeze softly caressed her face, and she breathed it in deeply. The scent of the ocean made her feel at peace, and she felt as if she were walking in a dream. The youngest princess was completely captivated by the beauty of the world above the sea. She listened to the music of the waves and smiled happily. The sound wrapped around her heart like a lullaby. She cherished every moment above the sea, filled with anticipation for the adventures to come. The youngest princess was making her dreams come true, one by one, as she floated on the dancing waves. Her adventure had just begun, and the world above the sea offered endless possibilities. She was ready to enjoy it all, with her heart brimming with curiosity and excitement. The youngest princess cautiously lifted her head above the water and gazed at the world beyond. A completely new world unfolded before her eyes. Warm sunlight kissed her face, droplets of water fell from her hair, and the gentle breeze brushed her hair softly. Seeing this scene for the first time, the youngest princess held her breath and looked around slowly. The sky was endlessly wide and blue, with white clouds floating like fluffy pillows. Birds flew freely in the sky, their joyful sounds fresh and new to her ears. Watching the birds fly was an amazing experience for her. The beach stretched endlessly with soft, golden sand. Waves gently lapped at the shore, creating white foam that looked like lace decorating the beach. The sand glittered under the warm sunlight, and the youngest princess couldn't take her eyes off its beauty. Near the beach, small trees grew, swaying gently in the wind. The leaves of the trees shimmered green, reflecting the sunlight, and beneath them, small flowers bloomed. The colorful flowers and their delicate fragrance carried by the wind filled her senses. The youngest princess was completely entranced by the wonders of the world above the sea. Her heart was filled with excitement and anticipation for new discoveries and adventures. Everything was so mysterious and beautiful to her. "Wow, it's so beautiful!" exclaimed the youngest princess. An awe-inspiring sight stretched before her. The sun was slowly setting, painting the sky with red hues. The sun descended beyond the horizon, tinting the sky with magnificent colors. The sky was bathed in golden light, which reflected off the surrounding clouds, creating a breathtaking scene. The clouds floated like paintings in the sky, and the last rays of the sun spread softly through them. Under the golden sky, the sea shimmered in shades of purple. The gentle waves reflected the sunlight, making it look like purple waves were dancing. The youngest princess was completely mesmerized by this stunning sight. Her heart was filled with wonder and awe. "This is what a sunset looks like," she whispered, widening her eyes to take in every detail of the scene. As the sun sank further below the horizon, the sky's colors continued to change. From gold to orange, and finally to red. The red light made the sea even more magical, and the youngest princess held her breath, captivated by the beauty. The wind softly brushed her face, and the sound of the waves was like gentle music to her ears. She wished this moment would last forever. Her heart was filled with warm happiness, and tears of joy sparkled in her eyes. The youngest princess approached the beach as the sun set. She gently touched the warm, soft sand with her toes, savoring its warmth. Her heart was filled with wonder and awe. She had never dreamed she would see such a beautiful sight with her own eyes. "I've waited so long to see this," she murmured to herself. Her voice was filled with the joy and emotion of finally reaching her long-awaited dream. The sunset, with its red hues, was etched deeply in her heart. The sound of the waves was like gentle music to her ears. The waves softly lapped at the shore, creating a soothing rhythm that calmed her heart. She closed her eyes and focused on the sound. The waves' melody wrapped around her like a lullaby, warming her heart. The breeze gently tousled her hair. The wind was warm and refreshing, softly caressing her face. The youngest princess smiled happily, feeling the wind's embrace. At that moment, she felt like the happiest mermaid in the world. The youngest princess cherished the beautiful scene created by the sea and sky. Her heart was filled with joy and gratitude, and she wished this moment would last forever. Then, something caught her eye. It was a large ship with lights twinkling brightly. The ship moved slowly across the water, and the lights shone like stars in the night sky. The youngest princess was drawn to the lights and swam closer to the ship. The ship seemed mysterious and wondrous to her. On the deck, many lanterns were hung, shining in various colors. Red, blue, green, and many other hues combined to create a beautiful sight. The youngest princess approached the ship carefully. Her heart was full of curiosity. Where did this ship come from? And who are the people on it? She wondered. The sounds coming from the ship piqued her curiosity even more. Joyful music and laughter floated on the breeze from the ship, reaching the princess's ears. The youngest princess, intrigued by the sounds, swam even closer. Her heart was filled with excitement and curiosity. The music was lively and delightful. Various instruments blended to create a beautiful melody. The sounds of the piano and violin harmonized, giving the feeling of a dance. The music drifted softly over the sea, making the youngest princess's heart flutter. Laughter accompanied the music. People on the ship were joyfully talking and laughing. Their laughter sounded genuinely happy, and the youngest princess was captivated by it. She became even more curious about the fun happening on the ship. "Oh, What is happening there? The youngest princess wondered as she cautiously approached. Her heart was full of curiosity, and she decided to get even closer to the ship to satisfy her curiosity. Carefully navigating the waves, the youngest princess swam towards the ship. Her tail moved gracefully through the water as she silently approached the ship. The lights and sounds from the ship became clearer as she drew nearer. When she reached the ship, the youngest princess was amazed by the dazzling scene she witnessed. Many people were dressed in splendid clothes, dancing joyfully on the deck. Their clothes glittered with gold and silver, adorned with jewels of various colors, making them look like dancing stars. The people held hands and danced in circles, their faces full of bright smiles. Their dance was elegant and rhythmic, moving perfectly to the music like a grand piece of art. Their steps were light and fast, with perfect coordination down to their fingertips. On the ship, beautiful music was playing, performed by skilled musicians. They played violins, flutes, harps, and other instruments, creating a lively melody. The music floated gently over the sea, reaching the youngest princess's ears. The sound was soft and dynamic, like a breeze blowing in. The youngest princess was completely mesmerized by the sight. She held her breath and watched their dance and music. The dance was so beautiful, and the music made her heart flutter. She wished this moment would last forever. The people on the ship talked and laughed while dancing. They seemed genuinely happy, and their happiness spread to the youngest princess. She wanted to dance with them. This must be the prince's birthday party. The youngest princess whispered in excitement at her discovery. Her heart began to race, and her curiosity about what was happening on the ship grew even more. At that moment, she noticed a young prince shining brightly. The prince stood in the center of the ship, smiling and talking with people. He looked like a star, shining brightly. The prince was tall, with deep blue eyes like the ocean. His smile was as bright and warm as the sun. The prince wore splendid clothes embroidered with gold, with silver decorations on his shoulders. His hair fluttered softly in the breeze, and his eyes sparkled like stars in the night sky. The youngest princess was momentarily breathless, gazing at his beauty. "Oh, that must be the prince," the youngest princess murmured to herself. Her eyes sparkled, and her heart was completely captivated by the prince's beauty. The prince shone like a star. He caught everyone's attention, and his presence radiated light. His smile was as bright and warm as the sun, making everyone around him happy. The prince spoke to people with a noble and graceful demeanor. His voice was soft, and whenever he spoke, people listened attentively. He treated everyone kindly and thoughtfully, and his words brought great joy to those around him. The prince's eyes were deep blue like the ocean, warm and gentle. Everyone who met his gaze was charmed by him. The prince danced with the people, genuinely enjoying the moment. The princess's heart began to beat faster as she watched him. Her heart was filled with excitement and joy, and the prince looked perfect, like the hero of a dream. Under the moonlight, the prince looked even more radiant. The soft moonlight surrounded him, making him glow. His hair shimmered in the moonlight, and his eyes were clear and blue like the ocean. The youngest princess held her breath, captivated by his smile and gaze. His presence shone like a star, and his smile was as bright as the sun. His warm eyes felt like they were looking right at her, and she wished this moment would last forever. The prince talked and danced with the people, his voice soft and pleasant. People listened attentively whenever he spoke. He treated everyone with kindness and consideration, and his words brought them great joy. The youngest princess's heart beat faster as she watched the prince. She was completely captivated by his bright smile and gentle eyes. She felt a strong desire to get closer to him. Her heart was filled with curiosity and excitement about the prince. At that moment, the prince's eyes turned towards the youngest princess. His eyes met hers, and she momentarily held her breath. Her heart raced, and her face turned red. She was completely captivated by his warm gaze. The prince's laughter was as clear and refreshing as the sound of waves breaking. His laughter captivated the princess, and her heart pounded. The sound was like the song of the sea, pleasantly resonating in her ears. Unconsciously, the youngest princess felt drawn to the prince. His laughter, smile, and warm eyes made her heart flutter. She saw his eyes sparkle and his smile shine brightly like the sun. His presence left a strong impression on her, deeply touching her heart. The princess watched him, feeling that everything about him was mysterious and awe-inspiring. His every move was graceful and noble, and his voice was soft and kind. He joyfully talked and danced with the people, truly enjoying the moment. The youngest princess felt a strong desire to know him more. She wanted to hear his stories and enter his world. Her heart was full of curiosity and excitement about the prince. She wanted to spend time with him and see his smile up close. "The prince is really special," whispered the youngest princess. Her heart was filled with joy and excitement, and she began to dream of meeting him. She wanted to get closer to him, but knew she had to hide her true identity. She carefully watched him, circling around him. Such wonderful sights couldn't be seen under the sea. The youngest princess whispered, gazing at the prince. Her heart was filled with love at first sight. The youngest princess had seen many beautiful things in the sea, but the sight before her eyes was incomparable. The prince's appearance was so beautiful and charming that it captivated her heart. His smile, laughter, and warm eyes made her heart race. "The prince is really special," she whispered again. Her eyes were fixed on the prince, unable to look away. Everything about him was a marvel. His laughter was as clear and refreshing as the sound of waves, and his smile shone brightly like the sun. The princess watched the prince, feeling a deep love in her heart. She wanted to get closer to him and hear his stories. Her heart was full of curiosity, excitement, and deep love for the prince. She wanted to enter his world and stay by his side. "Such wonderful sights couldn't be seen under the sea," she whispered quietly. Her voice was filled with admiration and love. She wanted to find a way to be with him. Her heart burned with love for the prince. But then, a loud clap of thunder and a storm struck. The youngest princess was startled and looked around. Dark clouds covered the sky, and it quickly became enveloped in darkness. Lightning flashed across the sky, briefly illuminating the scene before disappearing into darkness again. The sea began to churn violently. Huge waves rose like mountains, threatening the ship. The waves crashed fiercely, as if giant hands were trying to engulf the ship. The wind grew stronger, and the people on the ship were filled with shock and fear. The youngest princess looked at the terrified people, feeling anxious. She watched the ship, trying to figure out how to help in the storm. A loud crash sounded as a huge wave hit the ship. The ship rocked violently, and the people struggled to keep their balance. The lanterns on the ship began to flicker and go out in the storm. People called out to each other for help, their voices drowned by the wind and waves. The ship leaned more and more, and the youngest princess worried for their safety. The ship teetered precariously, unable to withstand the force of the waves. The power of the waves was overwhelming, and the ship rocked like a paper boat. The youngest princess felt heartbroken watching the frightened people. As another massive wave crashed over the ship, it began to break apart with a loud noise. Wooden planks split, and the ship's structure started to fall apart piece by piece. People screamed, clinging to each other, but the ship could no longer protect them. The youngest mermaid princess witnessed it all from the water. She saw the ship breaking apart and people falling into the water. Her heart was filled with worry and fear. She watched from the water as the waves engulfed the ship. Pieces of wood and belongings were scattered everywhere, and people were struggling in the water. They were gripped by fear, holding on to each other and calling for help. Prince. The youngest princess's heart pounded with worry. She was concerned for the prince's safety and knew she had to find him. Without hesitation, she cut through the water towards the sinking ship. The waves still crashed violently, and the water was chaotic. But the youngest princess never gave up. Her heart held only one goal: to save the prince. She swam powerfully, quickly approaching the sinking ship. The water was dark and cold, but the youngest princess swam forward without fear. Her eyes scanned the water, searching for the prince. Her heart was determined to save him. She passed by struggling people, focusing on finding the prince. The sea was as chaotic as a swirling vortex. The waves crashed fiercely against the youngest princess, but she searched for the prince without fear. She never gave up, despite the strong currents. Her eyes searched tirelessly for the prince, and her heart was filled with determination to save him. The wind blew fiercely, and the waves struck her hard, but she pressed on. She swam with all her strength, looking for the prince in the tumultuous water. It was dark, and her vision blurred, but her resolve grew stronger. She was tossed around by the waves, but she never gave up on the prince. Then, she saw the prince struggling in the water. His body floated helplessly, and his face looked pale. The prince was unconscious and slowly sinking. The youngest princess's heart sank at the sight. Her heart was filled with worry and fear, but also a strong determination to save him. Without hesitation, she swam through the water towards the prince. Prince. She quickly reached the prince and held him tightly. Her heart was filled with fear and worry, but her strong resolve to save him spurred her into action. The princess held the prince's limp body firmly, doing everything she could to ensure his safety. She held him close and swam powerfully through the water. Her tail cut through the water strongly, moving forward. Her eyes stayed focused on the prince's condition, constantly watching their surroundings. The waves still crashed violently, but the princess never gave up. Her heart was filled with only the prince's safety, and she did everything she could to save him. Her movements were swift and precise, and her will was unyielding. Her heart had only one goal: to save the prince. The ocean roared, trying to stop her, but the princess's love and courage were stronger than the storm. She feared no obstacle and gave her all to save the prince. The waves continued to crash violently, and the wind whipped around her. But the princess remained undeterred. Her eyes were filled with determination and love, and her heart burned with the desire to save the prince. She swam powerfully, cutting through the waves and creating a spray as she moved forward. She held the prince's limp body firmly, doing everything she could to ensure his safety. She carefully kept his face above water, making sure he could breathe. Her movements were swift and precise, and her will was unyielding. Her love was strong enough to overcome the storm. She fought through the water, struggling to bring the prince to safety. Her heart was filled only with the prince's safety, and she used all her strength to save him. The mermaid princess, holding the prince, struggled towards the shore. Her body was exhausted, but her heart was filled with a strong resolve to save the prince. She held him tightly, keeping his face above water as she swam. The waves, now gentle, seemed to guide her. The sea, as if aiding her efforts, calmed, and the waves softly pushed her towards the beach. The water danced quietly around her, lighting her way. The moonlight illuminated her path softly. It stretched along the beach, wrapping her and the prince in its gentle glow. The prince's face, although pale, still looked beautiful under the moonlight. The light gave her hope, and she followed it step by step. The mermaid princess held the prince gently, doing everything she could to ensure his safety. She held his hand tightly and watched his face closely, hoping he would regain consciousness. Her eyes were filled with worry and love, but she did not give up. When she reached the beach, the mermaid princess carefully laid the prince on the soft sand. She examined his face closely to check if he was safe. Although his face was pale, it still shone like a star. The moonlight on his forehead made his face glow even brighter, as radiant as the sun. Although his breath was still weak, the mermaid princess felt relieved that he was alive. She held his hand tightly, gently caressing his face, hoping he would wake up. Her eyes were filled with concern and love. The princess sat beside the prince, holding his hand tightly and praying fervently. Her heart was full of worry and love. She looked at his face and hoped for his safety. "Prince, please wake up. Please, come back to life," she whispered softly. Her voice was filled with deep affection and earnest desire. Tears welled up in her eyes and fell onto the prince's hand. The sound of the waves continued to gently embrace the beach, and the moonlight softly illuminated the two of them. The wind lightly blew, gently swaying the princess's hair. Her heart was filled with a desperate hope that the prince would open his eyes again. The princess held the prince's hand tightly, praying for him to wake up. Her heart was filled with a strong hope that he would smile and rise again. She did not let go of his hand, praying for his safety. As time passed, the princess stayed by the prince's side. She watched his face, hoping his breath would grow stronger. Her heart was filled with worry and love, but also with hope. "Prince, please wake up," she whispered again. Her voice trembled, but it was filled with deep affection and earnest desire. She held his hand tightly, praying for his safety. Then, the first light of dawn began to gently illuminate the beach. The darkness slowly lifted, and the sky started to brighten. The beach was bathed in a soft light, and that light embraced the two of them. The light of dawn, like a symbol of hope, warmed the princess's heart. Seeing that light, the princess felt hopeful. "Prince, please wake up," she whispered again. Her voice still trembled, but it was filled with deep affection and earnest desire. She held the prince's hand tightly, praying for his safety. The light of dawn grew stronger, filling the beach with warm light. The princess believed the prince would wake up. Her heart was filled with hope and courage. She stayed by his side, hoping he would open his eyes again. Then, a miraculous thing happened. The prince slowly opened his eyes. His eyelids fluttered open, and the mermaid princess watched him intently. Her heart pounded with excitement and joy. The prince blinked and looked around faintly. His vision was still blurry, but he saw the beautiful mermaid princess. She smiled at him, her eyes filled with joy and relief. The prince slowly regained his senses, recognizing the mermaid princess. His eyes were still weak, but he was aware of her presence. His face showed a mixture of confusion and a warm smile. "Where am I?" the prince asked weakly. His voice was faint and trembling, but to the mermaid princess, it sounded like the most beautiful music. She was filled with joy and relief at hearing his voice. "Prince, you're on the beach." "It's a safe place," the mermaid princess answered gently. Her voice was filled with deep affection and warmth. She held his hand tightly and smiled at him, watching his face. The prince slowly turned his head to look around. His vision was still blurry, but the beauty of the beach and the mermaid princess's warm smile reassured him. His eyes were filled with gratitude and curiosity. The mermaid princess looked at the prince with tears of joy. Her heart was filled with happiness and relief that the prince had woken up. She held his hand tightly, watching his face and feeling grateful that he was safe. But soon, she remembered reality. She didn't know what would happen if the prince discovered she was a mermaid. She decided she needed to leave quietly before the prince saw her clearly. The prince was still looking around in confusion. As his vision became clearer, he began to see the mermaid princess's face. She sensed his gaze turning towards her and felt a mix of emotions. She wanted to stay by his side, but she also knew she had to hide her true identity. The mermaid princess held the prince's hand one last time. Her eyes were filled with regret and love. "Prince, stay safe," she whispered softly. Her voice trembled, but it was filled with deep affection and sincerity. Her heart was filled with gratitude and relief that the prince was alive. The mermaid princess returned to the water, thinking about the prince's safe awakening. Tears of joy filled her eyes, and her heart was warm with emotion. The waves gently embraced her, comforting her. The sea, understanding her tiring journey, gently surrounded her. The mermaid princess thought of the prince and smiled happily. Knowing he was safe gave her great relief. As dawn broke, the beach was filled with a calm and peaceful atmosphere. The darkness gradually faded, and the sky turned a soft pink and orange. The sea sparkled gently, and the waves softly caressed the shore. The beach was quiet and serene. The first light of dawn gently illuminated everything, making it look calm. The wind blew softly, creating gentle ripples in the sand, and the leaves of the trees swayed, feeling the fresh morning air. The prince still lay on the soft sand, a peaceful smile on his face. His breath became steadier, and his face glowed warmly in the dawn light. His body was now in a safe place, and he quietly began to recover. The youngest mermaid princess watched from her hiding place. Her heart was still filled with worry and love for the prince. The beach remained calm and peaceful. The prince lay on the soft sand, and his breath grew steadier. The first light of dawn gently illuminated his face, wrapping him in warmth. His face wore a peaceful smile. The youngest mermaid princess felt relieved watching the prince. She was reassured seeing him wake up safely. However, she decided not to reveal herself. She was content to just ensure his safety. She watched quietly, holding her breath. Seeing his body move slightly, she hoped he would fully recover soon. Her heart still held a fervent wish for his safety. The youngest mermaid princess prayed for the prince's recovery, waiting for him to wake up completely. She felt great joy just watching him and confirming his safety. Her heart was filled with deep love and concern for the prince. At that moment, the sound of a distant bell rang, and beautiful ladies rushed to the shore where the prince lay. They wore splendid clothes, and their faces were filled with worry and anxiety. The bell rang throughout the beach, and the ladies quickly ran towards the prince. They were startled to see the prince and rushed to his side. Their eyes were filled with deep concern and fear. The youngest mermaid princess sighed with relief as she watched. She felt reassured, knowing the prince would now receive proper care. She stayed in place, still praying for his safety. The mermaid princess hid behind a rock. Her heart raced, but she decided not to leave, wanting to ensure the prince's safety. She peeked cautiously from behind the rock, watching the prince and the beautiful ladies. Her heart was filled with worry and curiosity, but she also felt reassured seeing the prince receive care. The ladies continued to watch over the prince, checking his condition and tending to him. Their faces showed deep concern and affection, and they hoped the prince would wake up soon. Their touches were gentle and kind, and they did everything they could to help him recover quickly. The mermaid princess watched from behind the rock, holding her breath. Her heart was still filled with love and worry for the prince. She decided to stay by his side for his safety. Her heart pounded, but she prayed for his recovery. One of the beautiful ladies approached the prince and gently helped him up. Her touch was kind and careful, and her eyes were filled with deep concern and affection. The prince, with the lady's help, slowly rose. His face still showed fatigue and confusion, but he felt the comfort of her touch and gradually regained his strength. The lady supported him, checking his condition. "Prince, are you all right?" she asked softly. Her voice was warm and gentle, filled with genuine concern. She looked at his face, hoping for his safety. The prince felt dizzy and tired, but nodded as he looked at her. "Yes, I'm all right." "Thank you," he replied weakly. His voice carried gratitude and a bit of confusion. The prince looked at her with a puzzled expression. His eyes showed confusion and a bit of fatigue, but he trusted her and followed her kind smile and warm touch. She held his hand and gently helped him to his feet. "Prince, you need to rest here. I will take you to a safe place," she said softly. Her voice was warm and comforting. Still confused, the prince followed her. His mind was still muddled, but he decided to trust her gentle touch and kind voice. The lady supported the prince and led him to a nearby church. The church, located close to the beach, was quiet and peaceful. It had tall spires and beautiful stained glass windows, with the first light of dawn gently illuminating the interior. The youngest mermaid princess watched from afar, feeling a pang in her heart. She was the one who had saved the prince, but she couldn't reveal that truth. Her heart was filled with deep sadness and regret. The mermaid princess watched quietly from the water as the prince leaned on another's touch and slowly recovered. Her heart felt heavy, and tears welled up in her eyes. She was troubled by the reality that she couldn't reveal her identity. The prince slowly regained his strength, relying on the lady's care. His face began to show relief and peace, and his eyes reflected gratitude. But the mermaid princess felt sad that he couldn't send his grateful gaze towards her. "I saved him, but why can't I be by his side?" she thought, immersed in sorrow. Her heart was filled with deep love for the prince and regret for the reality that she couldn't be with him. With a heavy heart, the princess returned to the sea. She took one last look at the prince, shedding tears of sorrow. Her heart was heavy and aching, but she felt a small comfort knowing he was safe and recovering. From that day, her mind was filled with thoughts of the prince. In the depths of the sea, she constantly recalled his face and warm smile. She cherished the brief moments she had spent with him, praying for his safety and happiness. The youngest mermaid princess couldn't forget the prince's face and voice. She was saddened by the reality that she couldn't be by his side, but she was grateful to know he was safe. Her heart was still filled with deep love and longing for him. In the sea, she often swam near the beach, recalling the prince. She watched the seaweed dance with the waves and the sparkling waves, reminiscing about her moments with the prince. Her heart beat fast, and she prayed for his happiness. What kind of person is the prince? If I were human, could I meet him? She wondered constantly. Her heart was filled with longing and curiosity about the prince. In the depths of the sea, the youngest mermaid princess dreamed of the day she could be with the prince, imagining his world. She wondered what kind of person he was and what his world was like, dreaming of a day she could be with him. The youngest princess thought that if she became human, she could be with the prince. She wanted to experience his world, hear his stories, and see his smile up close. Her heart was filled with a strong desire to be by his side. But she kept all these thoughts to herself. She couldn't share her dreams and desires with her family or friends. Her love and longing were a secret known only to her. In the depths of the sea, she quietly kept her feelings hidden. She concealed her love and longing for the prince deep within her heart and wished for his happiness. She tried to accept the reality that she could not be by his side while imagining his world. The youngest princess spent her days dreaming of the day she could be with the prince, recalling his face and smile. Her heart was filled with love and longing for him, but she kept all these feelings as a secret to herself. She prayed for him and wished for his happiness. She had saved the prince, but she couldn't tell anyone. Her love remained hidden, deep and quiet. Her heart was filled with deep love and longing for the prince. The youngest mermaid princess felt sad that she couldn't reveal she was the true hero who saved the prince. Her sacrifice and courage were known only to her, and she couldn't share it with anyone. Her love bloomed quietly in the depths of the sea. Every day, she thought of the prince's face and smile, praying for his happiness. Knowing he was safe brought her great comfort, but she also felt heartache that she couldn't be by his side. Her love was deep and true, but the fact that she couldn't express it made her even sadder. The youngest mermaid princess went about her daily life in the sea, unable to shake off thoughts of the prince. She tried to accept the reality that she couldn't be by his side, but his face and voice constantly captivated her heart. Her love bloomed quietly in the depths of the sea. She kept the fact that she had saved the prince a secret, praying for his happiness. Her heart was filled with deep love and longing for him, and she did everything she could for his sake. Her love was deep and true, hidden in the deepest part of her heart. The youngest mermaid princess sought out her grandmother, a wise mermaid who had vast knowledge about the sea, the land, and the human world. Her grandmother always greeted her with a warm smile and listened to her worries and questions. The youngest mermaid princess went to her grandmother to seek her wise advice. She wanted to share the love and longing hidden deep in her heart. She believed her grandmother could provide the answers she needed. When the mermaid princess arrived at her grandmother's home, she was welcomed with a warm smile. Her grandmother's home was located deep in the sea, a cozy and peaceful place filled with the treasures of the ocean, with the gentle sound of the waves soothing her heart. "Come in, my dear granddaughter," her grandmother said in a gentle voice. Her face was full of warmth, and her eyes showed deep love for the youngest mermaid princess. "What is it that troubles you, my precious granddaughter?" her grandmother asked in a soft, comforting voice. Her eyes were filled with deep love and understanding. The youngest mermaid princess hesitated at her grandmother's kind question. She thought about how to express the deep worries and questions in her heart. But looking at her grandmother's warm eyes, she gathered the courage to speak. The mermaid princess shared her curiosity without hesitation. Her voice was filled with curiosity and deep concern. "Grandmother, do humans really become stars when they die? What is their life like? Why can't we be like them?" she asked earnestly. Her eyes sparkled as she awaited her grandmother's answer. Her grandmother smiled and explained, "Humans have a short but intense life. They love, dream, and sometimes experience pain. When they die, their souls rise to the sky and become stars." The youngest mermaid princess listened intently, nodding. She was deeply impressed by her grandmother's words about humans living short but intense lives. She wondered how they loved, dreamed, and experienced joy and sorrow. "Grandmother, if their lives are so intense, do they feel emotions differently from us?" the youngest mermaid princess asked cautiously, her voice filled with deep curiosity and a bit of fear. Her grandmother nodded with a gentle smile. "Yes, dear. Humans feel strong emotions. Their love burns brightly, their dreams soar high, and their pain is deep and poignant. They grow and understand each other through these emotions. The mermaid princess's eyes sparkled with curiosity. A strong desire grew in her heart. I want to be human too. I want to feel like them and experience their world, she said earnestly. Her grandmother gently held her hand and said, "But our home is in the sea. Dreaming between the sea and land is a beautiful thing." The mermaid princess thought for a moment about her grandmother's words. She knew the sea was her precious home. Life under the sea had brought her much happiness and safety, and she had grown up with much love. "Grandmother, I love the sea too. But I can't stop wanting to be with the prince," the mermaid princess said quietly. Her voice was filled with deep worry and sadness. "I want to dream between the two worlds and make that dream come true." Her grandmother nodded, her eyes filled with deep understanding and compassion. "My dear, your dream is beautiful and special. Your love and courage will guide you. But always protect your heart and value yourself." A grand ball was held in the underwater kingdom, and all the mermaids were enjoying it. The youngest mermaid princess, however, felt heavy-hearted. While the other mermaids laughed and cheered, and beautiful music played, she felt distant from all the festivities. Her heart was filled with longing for the human world, especially the prince. Even in the midst of the glittering ballroom and dancing mermaids, her mind was focused on the world above the sea. She thought of the prince's face and his warm smile, feeling a strong desire to be by his side. The ball grew more lively, and the mermaids danced and chatted happily. But the youngest mermaid princess felt lonely amid all the joy. Her heart was filled with curiosity about the human world and deep love for the prince. What is the prince doing now? Does he think of me as I do of him? She wondered, dreaming of the day she could be with him. She wanted to experience his world and hear his stories. The splendor of the ball did little to comfort her. Her heart was set on the prince, and the fact that she couldn't be with him made her even sadder. She was ready to do anything to be with him, even though she knew it would be difficult. The mermaid princess could no longer hold back her thoughts of the prince. Her heart was filled with love and longing for him, and her desire to be by his side grew stronger. She could no longer suppress her feelings. She made up her mind. She was ready to do anything to be with the prince. Quietly, she slipped out of the ballroom. The other mermaids continued to dance and celebrate, but her heart was elsewhere. She swam through the dark sea, heading towards the sea witch's home. The sea witch lived in the darkest depths of the sea, surrounded by whirlpools and shadows. The mermaid princess felt fear, but her resolve was firm. The sea witch's home was located near a black whirlpool in the darkest depths of the sea. It was a place filled with darkness and fear, avoided by other sea creatures. The whirlpool spun endlessly, creating a deep darkness, and no light could penetrate it. The mermaid princess swam through the dark sea. Her heart was filled with both fear and a strong love and determination for the prince. She was ready to face anything. The strong currents of the whirlpool tried to pull her in, but she never stopped. As she got closer to the sea witch's home, it was hidden among massive rocks, surrounded by strange creatures watching her from the shadows. The mermaid princess gathered her courage and approached the home. Finally, she arrived at the sea witch's door, took a deep breath, and knocked. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the sea witch. Her eyes were sharp, and an ominous smile spread across her face. "Grandmother, please help me. I want to become human. I want to meet the prince," the mermaid princess pleaded with deep affection and desperation in her voice. The sea witch chuckled. "You love a human? Such a foolish heart. But if you truly desire it, I can help you. But remember, it comes with a great cost." The mermaid princess's heart pounded at the sea witch's words. Her love was true and strong, but she also felt fear about the price she would have to pay. However, she steadied her resolve and looked directly into the sea witch's eyes. The mermaid princess answered without hesitation, "I'll do anything. Please, make me human." Her voice was filled with urgency. The sea witch smiled wickedly. "All right, if that's what you want, I'll help you," the sea witch said with a rough voice. Her eyes gleamed as if testing the mermaid princess's determination. The sea witch, with an evil smile, explained the conditions. "You will lose your tail and gain 2 legs. But you will no longer be able to use your beautiful voice, and every step you take will feel like walking on sharp knives." The mermaid princess felt a moment of fear at the sea witch's words, but her love overcame her fear. "I'm ready to pay that price," she replied resolutely. Her eyes were filled with sincerity and determination. The sea witch, satisfied with the mermaid princess's resolve, nodded. "All right, your courage is commendable," she said with a wicked smile. "But remember, this path is irreversible. And if you do not win the prince's true love, you will return to the sea and become foam on the waves at the first dawn after his wedding," the sea witch warned in a cold and merciless voice. The mermaid princess trembled with fear at the sea witch's words, but her love was strong enough to overcome any fear. "I'm ready to pay that price," she answered with a determined voice. Her eyes were filled with sincerity and resolve. The mermaid princess's heart trembled with fear, but the power of love and longing overcame it. She recalled her deep love for the prince and her desire to be by his side, calming herself. "I am ready. Please, grandmother, help me," she said, her eyes filled with sincerity and determination. She was prepared to make any sacrifice. The sea witch, seeing the mermaid princess's determination, quietly began to prepare the magic potion. Her hands moved skillfully and quickly, and a mysterious light flickered in the darkness. The ingredients for the potion came from the deepest parts of the sea, and they combined in the sea witch's hands. The mermaid princess watched the sea witch's movements, holding her breath. Her heart was a mix of fear and excitement. She was ready to make any sacrifice to meet the prince and be by his side. The potion glowed with a mysterious color, emitting strange smoke. The smoke spread slowly in the water, creating an eerie atmosphere. The mermaid princess, captivated by the light and smoke, reaffirmed her resolve. She took a deep breath and handed the small orb containing her voice to the sea witch. The orb was filled with her beautiful voice, and as she gave it to the sea witch, the mermaid princess felt her voice disappear. In that moment, her voice was lost forever. The mermaid princess felt a deep sadness as she lost her voice. She could no longer speak a single word. Her voice was now forever bound to the sea witch. The mermaid princess reflected on her decision once more, deeply understanding the meaning of love and sacrifice. She was prepared to endure any hardship for the prince, firmly holding on to her resolve. The mermaid princess held the cup with the magical potion tightly. The potion glowed with a mysterious blue light, with tiny particles of light dancing within. She took a deep breath, solidified her resolve, and drank the potion in one gulp. As soon as she drank the potion, the mermaid princess felt her body heat up. Her tail began to transform, and the burning pain spread through her entire body. Her beautiful tail slowly disappeared, replaced by human legs. The transformation felt like thousands of needles piercing her body. The mermaid princess gritted her teeth to endure the pain, but it grew increasingly intense. Tears flowed from her eyes, and her body trembled violently. On the soft sands of a sunlit beach, the mermaid princess awoke from a deep sleep after drinking the potion. she realized she was in an entirely different world. The soft sand beneath her feet, the fresh sea breeze on her face, and the clear sky and blue sea welcomed her. She now stood on two legs. Trying to balance and adjust to the new sensation, she cautiously took one step at a time. Each step was a small adventure, and leaving footprints on the sand was a novel and wondrous experience. The gentle morning sunlight illuminated the beach, creating a peaceful and serene atmosphere. The prince, riding his horse along the beach, stopped abruptly at the sight of the mysterious woman and asked with curious eyes, "Who are you, and where did you come from?" The mermaid princess heard the prince's question, but she could not answer as she had lost her voice. She simply gazed at him with her beautiful eyes, filled with countless stories and emotions. Noticing her silence, the prince sensed she had lost her voice and tried to understand her silent expression. Drawn by her beauty and mystery, he dismounted his horse and approached her. Gently taking her hand, he asked again in a warm voice, "Can you tell me how you came here?" The prince asked. The mermaid princess shook her head lightly, looking into his eyes. Her eyes conveyed both apology and gratitude. The prince held her hand tighter, deciding to take her to his palace. The prince and the mermaid princess rode together to the palace. Along the way, the prince felt something special in her gestures and expressions, even though she couldn't speak. Upon arriving at the palace, the prince placed her under his personal care. He instructed his best attendants and doctors to look after her well-being. She was given the most beautiful room in the palace, and everything necessary for her comfort was provided. The mermaid princess's new life was filled with surprises every day. The prince gifted her with elegant dresses, and the palace chefs prepared delicious and elaborate meals for her. These gestures helped her embrace her new life in the human world joyfully. The prince often took her for walks in the palace's beautiful garden. The garden, with its seasonal blooms, fountains, and small lakes, provided a peaceful and beautiful setting. As they walked, the mermaid princess experienced nature's beauty in a new way, and their conversations were through gestures and glances. The prince showed special affection for the mermaid princess. He cherished her like a beloved sister, treating her with kindness and protection. The prince wanted her to experience all the beauty the palace and its surroundings had to offer, sharing all the joy she could feel. The prince's constant support and affection helped the princess adapt to her new world. He invited her to various events and gatherings, always keeping her by his side in official settings. Together, they visited the palace library, exploring countless books. The prince explained human history and culture to her, broadening her knowledge. They often strolled through the vast palace garden, sharing their thoughts. The prince also encouraged her to participate in various cultural activities. She met new friends and experienced different aspects of the human world through plays, concerts, and festivals. These experiences brought her great joy, and she became more enchanted by the world she now belonged to. As the mermaid princess adapted to her human form, her legs always accompanied by a subtle pain. As the sea witch had warned, walking on human legs felt like stepping on sharp knives. This pain was with her from the moment she set foot in the human world, testing her with each step. But the mermaid princess bravely endured this pain. Being with the prince gave her great strength. The prince's constant support and affection provided her with great comfort and strength, allowing her to positively accept her hardship. The time spent with the prince was immensely joyful, making all the pain worthwhile. The youngest mermaid princess cherished every moment spent with the prince. In her new life, the prince was her center, and the time spent with him brought her immense joy and comfort. The prince was a figure who understood and cared for her, and she felt a deep affection for him. However, because she had lost her voice, the mermaid princess couldn't directly convey her feelings to the prince. This often troubled her. She focused on expressing her emotions through her eyes, expressions, and gestures. Whenever she was with the prince, she tried to convey her feelings with warm smiles and loving glances. One sunny afternoon, the mermaid princess was walking down the palace corridors when she overheard a conversation. The prince was speaking with his trusted friends. He spoke of how his heart had been captured by a maiden who had saved him in a perilous situation, a maiden he met at the church. In a voice filled with gratitude and affection, the prince said, "That maiden saved my life. I want to spend the rest of my life with her." These words froze the mermaid princess's heart. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The prince's heart was given to another woman he mistakenly believed to be his savior. The mermaid princess was deeply saddened by the prince's conversation. Although she had risked her life to save him, the prince had mistaken another woman for his savior. This gap left the princess in deep sorrow. Her heart was filled with love, betrayal, sorrow, and confusion, leaving a deep wound. She recalled her memories with the prince, dancing together, climbing hills, and walking through the palace gardens. Despite all the times she had expressed her feelings to him with all her heart, her love, unspoken due to her lost voice, was overshadowed by misunderstanding. Noticing the mermaid princess's sad eyes and trembling body, the prince approached her carefully and spoke with genuine concern in his voice. "Do you know that, maiden? "You look so much like her," he said, curious about any connection she might have with the woman he believed had saved him. These words brought unexpected pain to the mermaid princess. The prince thought she resembled the woman who had saved him, unaware that it was actually she who had been his true savior. This misunderstanding deepened her sorrow, and tears once again flowed from her eyes. Noticing the mermaid princess's sad eyes and trembling body, the prince approached her carefully and spoke with genuine concern in his voice. "Do you know that maiden? You look so much like her," he said, curious about any connection she might have with the woman he believed had saved him. These words brought unexpected pain to the mermaid princess. The prince thought she resembled the woman who had saved him, unaware that it was actually she who had been his true savior. This misunderstanding deepened her sorrow, and tears once again flowed from her. The mermaid princess had a desperate desire to express her love to the prince. However, her love was a silent emotion, merely shadowing the prince. Her heart was intense, but it failed to reach the prince, and the one-sided weight of her love gradually wore her down. The prince's heart had already leaned towards the other woman known as his savior. Knowing this caused the mermaid princess deep pain, and despite her affection and loyalty to the prince, she was tormented by the fear and disappointment that she might not be accepted. Eyes. In the palace garden, the youngest mermaid princess was deeply saddened upon hearing the news of the prince's impending marriage to another princess. The palace was filled with a lively and joyful atmosphere, but the mermaid princess's heart was heavy with sorrow. She walked alone through the quiet paths of the garden, trying to sort out her emotions. Among the beautiful flowers and gracefully swaying branches, the princess walked slowly. Her steps were heavy, and with each step, the weight of her heart grew. While the rest of the palace was busy with preparations and joyful voices, she quietly endured her pain and loneliness. The mermaid princess walked alone in the quiet garden of the palace. The prince's decisive words echoed in her heart, "I will marry the maiden who saved me." These words came to her as a painful echo. The realization that the prince, unaware of her true identity as his savior, was determined to marry someone else, pierced her heart deeply. The prince's decision brought her even greater loss, pulling her into her own turmoil and sorrow. In stark contrast to the beauty and serenity of the palace garden, her inner self was a raging storm. She hoped her sacrifices and love for the prince had not been in vain, but reality was far from her wishes. The prince's parents wanted to strengthen relations with a neighboring kingdom for political stability and prosperity. As part of this effort, the prince was to travel to meet the princess of the neighboring kingdom. This decision was made in favor of the royal family's greater good, setting aside the prince's personal feelings. When the news reached the palace, the mermaid princess felt her heart grow heavier. The thought of the prince meeting another princess brought her new sorrow. On the day the prince left to meet the neighboring princess, the mermaid princess secretly watched him, reminiscing about their memories together. Her heart was filled with longing and loss. Before the prince left, he met the mermaid princess in the palace garden. He explained the reasons for his departure and his obligation to follow his parents' orders. The prince asked her to take care of the palace in his absence and reassured her with a comforting smile. However, deep inside, the mermaid princess's heart was heavy with sadness over his departure. After the prince left, the mermaid princess felt his absence deeply as she walked alone through the palace and garden. She recalled their memories together, hoping the prince would return and find her. She prayed for his safe return and wondered what decision he would make after meeting the neighboring princess. She hoped that memories of her still lingered in his heart and looked forward to reuniting with him. When the prince visited the neighboring kingdom, an unexpected event occurred. The princess he met turned out to be the very maiden he mistakenly believed had saved him. It was actually the youngest mermaid princess, but the prince believed the situation to be otherwise. Upon meeting the neighboring princess, the prince was deeply moved by her noble actions and bravery, thinking she had saved him. He was greatly grateful for her beauty and her supposed act of saving his life. Overcome with emotion, he immediately knelt and proposed to her. His proposal was sincere, and the neighboring princess gladly accepted it. Upon hearing the news, the youngest mermaid princess's heart was filled with unbearable pain. She faced sorrow she found difficult to bear. The news of the prince's marriage and the fact that it was with someone else shattered her heart into 1,000 pieces. The princess walked to the most peaceful garden in the palace. There, she tried to confront her emotions alone. Sitting on a bench in the garden, she wept and felt the pain welling up from deep within her heart. This pain was unlike anything she had experienced before, and the sense of loss from the prince's marriage overwhelmed her completely. Despite having saved the prince, the mermaid princess could not convey this truth to him. Her heart was filled with sorrow, and tears streamed down her cheeks. The image of the prince lingered in her mind, and she longed to tell him she had saved him, but the fact that she couldn't speak made her suffering even worse. Sitting on the soft sand of the beach, she looked at the distant castle, where the festivities were in full swing. Bright lights and laughter emanated from the castle. The realization that the prince didn't recognize her as his savior broke her heart. The great church bells rang out across the kingdom, announcing the marriage of the prince and the neighboring princess. The bells rang clear and strong, echoing far across the sea. The chimes from the tall towers of the castle sounded like a blessing sent to the sky. Throughout the kingdom, there was a festive atmosphere. People cheered and filled the streets to share the joyous news. The streets, decorated with flowers, glowed brightly, and colorful flags fluttered along the pathways. People walking along the castle walls congratulated each other, their faces filled with happiness. On that day, the sea was calm, and the sky was clear. Everything seemed to be celebrating the union of the two. The gentle waves softly caressed the shore, as if singing a song of blessing. The sky was cloudless, and the warm sunlight shimmered on the water. A gentle breeze blew, softly rustling the trees along the shore. Birds sang sweetly as they flew in the sky, and flowers bloomed fully, spreading their fragrance. Nature seemed to bless the marriage, making everything look peaceful and beautiful. On the ship, a grand and magnificent wedding took place. Decorated with glittering ornaments and fragrant flowers, the ship seemed like a world from a fairy tale. The deck was adorned with white cloth and shining gold decorations, and beautiful bouquets were placed everywhere. The fragrant flowers' scent filled the air, making everyone's hearts flutter. The ship sailed slowly on the sea, swaying gently with the calm waves. Sunlight reflected off the water, casting shimmering light that combined with the decorations to create a magical scene. It was as if everything was perfect and beautiful, like a scene from a fairy tale. The bride and groom stood hand in hand, smiling brightly. The bride, in a pure white dress, wore a crown of small flowers on her head, looking like an angel. The groom, in elegant formal wear, had a dazzling smile. They gazed at each other lovingly, pledging their eternal love. The wedding music was soft and sweet. The melody of string instruments filled the air, wrapping everyone's hearts in warmth. Guests exchanged congratulations, sincerely wishing the couple happiness. Words of blessing were heard everywhere, and laughter and cheers filled the ship. Clowns danced humorously, and musicians played delightful music. The clowns, dressed in colorful clothes, made people laugh with their funny movements and expressions. Their witty dances and playful antics drew laughter and cheers from everyone. The musicians played sweet melodies, enhancing the magical atmosphere of the wedding. The gentle sounds of string instruments and the cheerful notes of wind instruments blended together, creating a dreamy experience. But amidst all the festivities, the youngest mermaid princess quietly shed tears in a hidden corner. Hiding behind the lavish decorations, she concealed her sorrow while watching the prince's happiness. Seeing the prince and the princess dance together lovingly, her heart ached. She couldn't cry out loud, not wanting to disrupt everyone's happiness. Instead, her tears silently fell to the ground, turning into shimmering droplets. Her heart was torn between her deep love for the prince and the sorrow of unfulfilled love. She knew that her love had to be sacrificed for someone else's happiness. The mermaid princess realized that her sacrifice was necessary for the prince's happiness. She tried to find solace in the prince's joy, but the thought of becoming sea foam made her afraid. "Am I really going to turn into sea foam?" she whispered, looking at the sea that embraced her. The sea remained calm, but her heart was more turbulent than ever. She had given up her voice and tail to save the prince, and now she faced the fate of disappearing. The mermaid princess lamented her fate, muttering to herself. Her heart was filled with love and sorrow, and her memories of the prince would forever remain in her heart. She sat in a quiet spot by the shore, recalling the moments she had shared with the prince. The day they first met on the beach, the moment she risked her life to save him, and the short time they spent together flashed through her mind like a dream. "Prince, I have always loved you. I would do anything for you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Her voice was gone, but deep within her heart, her love for the prince burned brightly. The sea seemed to understand her sorrow, its gentle waves softly comforting her. On the night of the wedding, the mermaid princess stood by the calm sea, silently weeping. Her heart was filled with sorrow. The night sky was full of stars, and the moon shone brightly over the sea. The waves gently touched the shore, as if trying to console her sadness. The mermaid princess sat alone on the beach, listening to the distant sounds of the wedding celebration. The faint laughter and music from the ship floated over the water. Those sounds only deepened her loneliness and sorrow. Watching the prince marry another, she realized her love would never be fulfilled. At that moment, her sisters emerged from the raging waves. The water swirled, bringing her sisters closer. "Little sister, take this," they said, handing her a gleaming knife. The knife sparkled in the moonlight, looking almost magical. Her sisters' faces were filled with sorrow and concern. They understood the pain and sadness their youngest sister was going through and wanted to help her as best they could. "This knife can turn you back into a mermaid. Use it to kill the prince," they explained carefully. The mermaid princess took the knife from her sisters and fell into deep contemplation. Her hand trembled as she held it, and countless thoughts swirled in her mind. She loved the prince and didn't want to harm him. However, using the knife was the only way to escape her fate. "This knife can turn you back into a mermaid. Use it to kill the prince." Her sisters' voices were cautious and tender. The mermaid princess looked at the shining knife, deep in thought. Her hand trembled as she held the knife, her mind filled with countless emotions. She loved the prince and didn't want to hurt him. But she knew using the knife was the only way to avoid her fate. Her sisters watched her anxiously, waiting for her decision. "We want you to be happy, little sister," their eyes reflected their sincere wishes. They truly wanted their sister to escape her pain. The mermaid princess looked at the knife with trembling hands. Her hands shook slightly, and her heart was torn with emotions. The knife gleamed in the moonlight, testing her resolve. In deep anguish, she headed to the prince's room. The night was quiet, and the entire castle was silent with everyone asleep. The mermaid princess walked carefully, continuously pondering what she had to do. Her heart was filled with love, sorrow, and fear. Inside, the prince slept peacefully, his face adorned with a happy smile. His face was serene and filled with a sense of security, causing the mermaid princess's heart to ache even more. She saw his smile, feeling a small comfort in his happiness, but also realizing how dreadful her task was. The mermaid princess quietly approached the prince. In her hand was the shining knife given by her sisters. The knife still gleamed in the moonlight, but her heart was heavy. She gazed at the prince's face, feeling deep love for him. Standing beside the prince, the mermaid princess raised the knife. Her hand still trembled, and the knife shone brightly in the moonlight. Her heart twisted with love and pain. The thought of hurting the prince to save herself tormented her. The prince continued to sleep peacefully, his face displaying a happy smile. The mermaid princess's heart ached more as she looked at him. She loved the prince deeply and cherished his happiness. But she had to make a choice, even though her fate seemed sealed. However, driven by her deep love, she couldn't harm the prince. The mermaid princess looked at the knife in her hand while gazing at the prince's peaceful face. His serene and happy smile made her heart ache even more. She loved him deeply and couldn't bring herself to harm him. The thought of hurting him weighed heavily on her. She looked down at the knife, realizing the depth of her love once more. She accepted that she couldn't harm him. Her love for him was more precious than her own life. As the knife in her hand grew heavier, she finally put it down. Tears streamed down her face, reflecting her sorrow and love. The mermaid princess kissed the prince's face one last time and whispered, "Prince, I love you. I can't hurt you." "No, I can't hurt my beloved prince," she whispered, throwing the knife into the sea. The knife sparkled as it fell into the water, disappearing into the waves. The mermaid princess realized how deep her love was once more. As the knife disappeared into the sea, she sighed in relief, feeling a weight lift from her heart. She was proud of her decision not to harm the prince, but the reality of her fate made her even sadder. Looking at the sea, she accepted her destiny. The mermaid princess sincerely wished for the prince's happiness, hoping her sacrifice wasn't in vain. Her heart was filled with love and sorrow, but she was ready to sacrifice everything for the prince's happiness. With a heart full of sorrow and love, she threw the knife into the sea and then threw herself into the clear water. The sea gently embraced her, and her tears mixed with the seawater. Her heart was still filled with love, but it was time to let go of that love. The mermaid princess knew she would turn into sea foam. But she didn't regret her decision not to harm the prince. She had sacrificed everything for his happiness and was ready to pay the price. As she plunged into the sea, she thought of the prince's face one last time. His happy smile and warm eyes would remain in her heart forever. She had given up everything for him, but she hoped her love wasn't in vain, returning to the sea's embrace. As soon as her body touched the cold sea, it began to turn into sea foam. Her skin slowly became transparent, and gentle waves wrapped around her, dissolving her existence into the sea. The sea foam sparkled in the moonlight, like tiny stars dancing on the water. The mermaid princess looked at the sky one last time. The starry night sky softly bid her farewell. Her heart filled with memories of the prince, and their moments together passed through her mind like a dream. She finally became sea foam, carried by the wind into the sky. The foam floated gently in the wind, shimmering like tiny stars in the moonlight. The mermaid princess's sacrifice and love would now be remembered forever between the sea and the sky. The wind softly embraced her, and her deep love spread into the sky. She had sacrificed everything for the prince's happiness, and her love would never be in vain. Her love became a legend of the sea, living in people's hearts forever. The mermaid princess's sea foam floated high into the sky, growing smaller and smaller. Her sacrifice had ended, but her love would last forever. As she rose into the wind, she sincerely wished for the prince's happiness. The sea became calm again, and the sky was still full of stars. The mermaid princess's story was whispered between the sea and the sky, touching everyone deeply. Her love and sacrifice would always be remembered, and her legend would quietly echo through the waves. From then on, the sad and beautiful love story of the mermaid princess and the prince was passed down for generations. Their story, now a legend of the sea, deeply touched many hearts through the ages. The courage and sacrifice of the mermaid princess, who came to the surface to find love, and her deep love for the prince were remembered by everyone. People would sit by the sea, listening to the story of the mermaid princess, reflecting on her love and sacrifice. Their sad but beautiful story taught many the true meaning of love and reminded them that love sometimes requires sacrifice and courage. The waves of the sea still gently rolled, and the night sky stars shone, conveying the mermaid princess's love. Her story lived in the hearts of people everywhere, in the depths of the sea and on the windy shores. The legend of the mermaid princess was told to the children of the kingdom, who dreamed while listening to her story. They learned how powerful love could be and how beautiful it was from her story. Dreaming of being brave like the mermaid princess, the children grew up. The love of the mermaid princess shone forever, and their story remained in the hearts of people. Her sacrifice and love softly echoed like the waves of the sea, deeply touching everyone. And the story of their love continued forever.